So back in August, I felt a slight raise in my lymph node that was barely noticeable. And now in October, a couple months later, it's grown into a pretty large lymph node mass that's really easy to see in person. And you can kind of see the progression of its growth in just a few months, which is a little scary. So what is this thing? Well, I'm not entirely sure yet. I'm kind of in one of those limbo phases after test results. So I had this thing biopsied 2 days ago, and I won't know for like another week. So it's kind of scary, but you can kind of see on my neck. I don't know if the camera can pick it up that well, but you'll be able to see like the needle prick kind of in this area here. And then if I press on it, you'll be able to see it. Like hopefully the camera's picking up on it, but I press it and you can kind of see it move to the right a little bit. So it's pretty large, and it's about 4-ish centimeters, 3 to 4 centimeters, like in diameter, which is not a great size for something to be on your neck. It's kind of a little bit painful to sleep on at this point. So in this video, I really want to talk about kind of the timeline of when I found this thing, and then also what tests I've had and appointments that I've had, and then finally a little bit on my thoughts on what I think it is and kind of next steps. And this is really all just in the name of transparency. Obviously, this is a very personal thing that's going on in my life right now, but I can't stop thinking about it. Like, it's all I've been thinking about for the last couple days. So it feels really good to like get it out and write it out and write out the timeline and figure out like what were the steps that I took to figure out what it is or where I got to where I am now. And I'm kind of hoping at least some of you will go get your masses checked out, because in the beginning I was so hesitant because I was convinced that this was not a big deal. So let's go ahead and jump into the timeline of things. I noticed this growth, I guess, at the time. I thought it was a swollen lymph node. I found it around August 7th. It was right after a rafting trip. And I was just like, I think I was just putting on moisturizer and I felt the slightest of a bump. And that's when I first saw and felt this mass thing. And I thought, oh great, I'm gonna have strep throat, right? Like I could feel it coming on. When I didn't get strep throat or an infection, I was like, that's really odd. I thought for sure I would be coming down with something, because typically my lymph nodes only swell when I get really sick. So when I didn't get strep throat and I didn't feel any of these symptoms of an infection that I typically see when I have a lymph node swell, I thought, okay, that's a little weird. And then I shot a message over to my primary doctor around August 19th. And I said, hey, I have a lymph node, blah, problem, I think it's swollen, whatever. And they told me to take a photo and send it to them. And that is the first photo that I have. So that photo is from August 19th. That is the first documented photo I have of this thing. And you can see in the photo, there's literally, like, you cannot see this thing. Like, you can barely see the slightest of a slight bump. And that's kind of why in the beginning I was like, this is just a swollen lymph node. I wasn't thinking about this at all. Now, fast forward to September 7th is when I have the next photo. And I think this was one-off random. I do not remember taking photos of this thing because I wasn't even in the state of worry yet. I was just like, my neck feels kind of weird. This lymph node is kind of bothering me, whatever. So I took the next photo on September 7th. So it's a couple weeks in between, and you can, again, barely see it, but it's slightly more noticeable at this point. And then fast forward to October 8th, and that is when you can really start to see this thing. So at that point, I took a photo and I had already started scheduling appointments. So I was relatively early into this thing, but still, I think I was at the ultrasound point. So I took a picture of this thing because it was big. I remember going, oh my gosh, this thing is huge. Like, what the heck? From September to October, this thing like doubled in size. And now fast forward to October 24th, and that was yesterday. So I took that last photo yesterday, and that was the day after I got it biopsied. So you can kind of see the biopsy needle pinpoint in the middle of it. And you can see it's slightly bigger, but it's not from like September to October bigger, but it's still growing. So that should give you an idea of kind of what it started to look like the last couple months. I didn't really notice the growing until I went back and looked at the photos for this video. So I didn't show these photos to my doctor yet because I literally just was making them for this video. And then I kind of was telling people it's grown a little bit, but I'm starting to realize this thing has been growing for a while. So let's talk about the appointments and tests now. So you saw the images, we know it's been growing, but let's talk about kind of the tests and stuff in between. So when I first noticed this, first couple weeks into August, I sent a message. This is how I initiated everything. I sent a message on August 19th. They told me to take a photo. I sent it in. They said, hey, you should come in and see me or see us. My primary care doctor was on vacation, so I went and saw a different guy. So I went and saw him, and that was scheduled on August 21st. Now, mind you, my neck looked like this, and I'm gonna put a picture on one of my sides, and you could barely see it. I was so embarrassed to go in for a swollen lymph node because I've gone in for a swollen lymph node before and they told me, just wait it out, go home, it's not a big deal. And I felt kind of like embarrassed and a little bit shamed into making it a big deal when it wasn't. So I'm going to this appointment, kind of a little embarrassed. I know I'm gonna spend probably like $400 on this freaking doctor's appointment, but I go in anyway. So far we are at a message on August 19th and then a scheduled appointment on the 21st. And that's when I first saw somebody to feel this mass. So he takes a look at it. He says, you know what, this definitely doesn't, it feels a little bigger than normal, but he wasn't very concerned at that point. He did do some blood work. So he ordered blood work. I went down the hall and did some blood work. It came back and it was fine. So that was kind of that. It was kind of done at that point. We're like, okay, maybe I overreacted. Maybe it's just a lymph node that's been swollen. Great. So I went about my life. So I go on, I kind of forget about it for maybe about a week. And then a couple weeks go by and I start to realize this thing is kind of still there. It almost looks bigger, but I couldn't really tell because like 2 weeks is just not enough time for you to realize if it's gone bigger or not. Now, they have left me alone. They're not gonna message me. They're probably not gonna follow up. They're thinking, you know, it probably went away. I realize around the 3rd week of September that this thing is not going away. So I send a message. And this message I sent on September 17th. I had taken a photo on, I think the 7th or somewhere in September before I sent that message, and I will put it up here. Again, you can barely see it, but you can almost slightly tell it's just a little bit more prominent than the first picture. So I forgot I took that photo. So I didn't show him that photo either. I'm really bad with these photos. I just kind of found them on my phone. I had no idea I took them. Anyway, so I send a message and I say, hey, I'm just gonna follow up. This thing is not gone down. And this is where self-advocation and self-advocating for yourself comes into play, right? Because I could have just left it alone, but I sent a message and I became annoying at that point. And I felt bad because I'm like, hey, like, what do I do? It's not going down. Like, you have to like almost advocate for yourself to get them to do something. So again, I send that message on September 17th. He then says, okay, I will schedule an ultrasound. So he puts in an order for an ultrasound. At this point, I have no idea how to schedule an ultrasound. Like, I don't know. It's not, you can't just schedule it in the portal like I'm used to using, you know how people use like MyChart and stuff. You can't do that there. Like, now you're in appointments of like, that you have to call. So it took me a while to figure it out. I end up calling, I get this thing booked, and I show up on October 7th. Turns out they filled out the form wrong. So I show up on October 7th and it looks like I'm going in for an x-ray. I'm like looking around, I'm like, this is not ultrasound equipment. This is x-ray equipment. They say, hey, they filled out the form wrong. They sent you to the wrong place. You're gonna have to go reschedule. And again, this took me another week because I got to call and do all these things. And so they get me in on October 17th. And at this point, my lymph node is starting to look way more prevalent, right? So I took this photo in October, early, I think the first week of October, I took this photo and you can really start to see it. And that's when I got the ultrasound, and the ultrasound comes back and they say, yes, you definitely have a mass. It's definitely almost 4 centimeters. I think they said 3.5. I think it was a little smaller than it is now. You need to go get it looked at. It came back like inconclusive. They couldn't tell me if it was a lymph node or not. Now, I am convinced it's a lymph node this entire time. There was no doubt in my mind. I'm like, it's a lymph node. It's exactly where I've had lymph nodes swell up before. So I already kind of knew it was a lymph node, but they couldn't tell me that. And because the ultrasound showed that there was a lot of blood flow going to this mass, they end up ordering a CT with contrast. which is basically when you have ACT and they put fluid in you. It's like a contrast agent fluid that like contrasts things better for a better image. And then when they put it in, it makes you feel like you're peeing yourself, which is a very uncomfortable feeling, by the way. So I have this appointment on October 21st. Okay, so that was like not that long ago. That's like this week, this last week. So I have this appointment. I'm starting to think, okay, this is actually serious now, because that was when it was kind of a turn, when I started to actually see the mass, like, and people are telling me, hey, what's on your neck? Like that kind of stuff. That's when I started thinking, okay, this thing's a little bit more serious than I initially thought. They also scheduled an ENT visit. So I go to this ENT visit, and this was on the 24th, it was Thursday. I go in thinking they're gonna tell me it's nothing. I just had convinced myself that I'm blowing this way out of proportion. I've got an ultrasound, I've got a CT, I've done blood work, like I'm embarrassed at this point. And this is really why I want to film the video as well, because I was so convinced that I was wasting people's time and that this was not something big. And maybe it might come back as nothing big, but it's looking more serious now. But I go into this appointment thinking they're gonna send me home. They're gonna say, yeah, it's just a swollen lymph node, like go home. I am so glad that I did not know anything going in, because they did so many tests, and if I would have known they were going to do all those tests, I would have been so nervous going to that appointment. They started by numbing my nose, and they stuck a camera down my nose into my throat to look around to see if it was an infection, because lymph nodes typically swell when you have an infection. So they looked around, they said all clear. Then they decided they were going to do a full biopsy with 3 samples. So 3 different needles. Now, when I saw those needles, I was done. I passed out. So I had a numb nose and a numb lymph node, because they did like a numbing agent on the node. You can kind of see where the needle went in. I fainted, like done, completely passed out. I wake up and I still have to get the biopsies and the nose thing. I don't think the nose thing went in yet. I passed out early on after the numbing, because it was like I couldn't feel my neck and I couldn't feel my nose. It was a lot of not feeling and a lot of scary words. Like they were saying the words lymphoma too many times for me to feel comfortable. So I was gone out. I wake up in about a minute. I have a little juice, I have a little cracker, I think it was goldfish, and then we do the actual biopsy, which I just closed my eyes the whole time. I was like, I'm not looking. Don't show that thing to me. So that was 2 days ago. So that was the day after yesterday I had the biopsy done. So when they pricked me, or they did the needles, I say prick, but it was a full biopsy. It was painful. I felt so nauseous that night, right? And the hard thing is, like, when you're getting all this stuff and there's so many nurses and so many tests happening and you're being moved back and up, you kind of forget things. But what I do remember is we talked a lot about lymphoma. There was a discussion about how this was a hard mass. This was not a soft tissue. Because I remember asking, like, is it just fluid? Can you just, like, drain it? And he's like, that's not what this is. I'm like, okay, great. He schedules surgery for November 7th, which is my birthday. So great birthday present to me. But he schedules it for November 7th. So that is coming up. I don't know the results yet. So depending on the results, the surgery might get canceled. It might stay. I don't know. So I'm in that phase where you're just kind of waiting. So it's been about 2 weeks since I filmed that last part of the video. And it is November 9th today. And it is still in my neck. I can't really tell if it's gotten bigger or not. It's really tucked in there, so you can't really see unless you're up close, and I turn my head and I can kind of pop it out a little bit. But it's about 3.5 to 4 centimeters still. Going to have surgery, so that's the big update, is that I am definitely going to need surgery for this thing. Now, I was supposed to have surgery on the 7th of November, which was my birthday, but it ended up getting pushed. The reason it's being pushed is because my original surgeon basically said, if it's in an awkward angle, I'll at least get a chunk of it, and then I'll leave the rest in there, which means I would probably need additional surgeries. So I went to go find a different surgeon, specifically one that could handle the mass if it turned out to be anything crazy. So I am getting it done at an actual, like a cancer center. Now, even though I'm getting it done at a cancer center doesn't necessarily mean that it's cancer, right? So essentially, I found a neck surgeon. So his specialty is in necks. My original surgeon was just kind of a more generalist surgeon. Now, I wanted to get a neck surgeon specifically because this is hanging around a bunch of neck nerves. So If for any reason there's some sort of complication, I have some major neck nerves that control my shoulder mobility and also my mouth mobility. So I didn't want to risk it, especially second surgeries, potentially complications, that kind of stuff. So I found a neck surgeon who's like really, really good, and he's gonna get the whole thing. So he told me he'll get the whole thing. He answered all my questions. Very calming. Like, I feel much better going into the surgery than I did before, because I was having nightmares, like, because I was worried that I was gonna have nerve damage or something like that. Now, this specific surgery is going to be like a complete like, I'm going to be put under, I'm gonna have a breathing tube, like, it's a pretty serious surgery. So the scar will also be like this big. I thought it was gonna be like smaller, but when he went like this, like, that's pretty large. But he said that he was gonna tuck it into my natural neck folds, so as I age, it'll be less and less noticeable. Plus there's like scar creams and stuff, so I'm feeling pretty good with that side of things. Now, once he takes it out, it's about a 1 to 2 week recovery. Most people will recover within a week and a half. So I'm kind of hoping that's where I end up landing. I'm gonna actually end up taking like short-term disability from work so I can get paid during my time off and not use my actual vacation for this. So that's kind of the plan. And then once they take it out, they'll send it to pathology, and then we'll know for sure what it is in about a week after. But he did say, like, there's no point in guessing on what it is. There's no point in like working yourself up. We're just gonna take it out and then we'll test it later, which makes me feel a lot better. Now, I will say, having this new surgeon, I feel like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders, specifically because he focuses in neck surgery, specifically for masses and cancerous masses. So he's like the perfect guy to take it out. I've been sleeping easy. Originally, the first surgeon, the first guy, really like freaked me out. I guess there was a lot of words of lymphoma. There was a lot of like not answering questions and not wanting to sit down. This new guy has been sitting down. We walked through everything. I feel really good about the surgery. So now I'm in a much better mood. I'm like, I'm gonna be fine. So if you see like a tonal change in the first half of the video to now, it's because I feel much better. I'm sleeping at night again. I'm not really freaking out anymore. I've never had a real surgery. I've had wisdom teeth removed, but you're not under. That's like a lighter under. This is like full blown breathing tube situation. So I was really freaked out in the beginning, but now that it's starting to sink in, like, I have to have surgery. Like, there's no way I can't just leave this thing in my neck. But I am feeling much better going into it. And that surgery will happen within the next couple weeks. Right now, there's like an IV fluid shortage, so they're having a hard time getting it scheduled, but I am on the top of that list, is what they said, because I keep calling, because I'm like, I want to schedule this. And they don't want to leave it in too long because it'll just continue to grow, and then it will be harder and harder to take out. So I want it out like now. But I also realize that obviously there's scheduling conflicts right now because of the whole shortage. So I'm just kind of waiting, but I will keep you guys updated once I know the actual date of the surgery itself. So to finish this video off, really, it's just go get weird masses in your body checked out. Don't be embarrassed. Like, I was really embarrassed that I was wasting people's time. I also was worried about money. Now I'm like, I've hit my deductible at this point. I've spent so much money on this freaking thing in my neck, and so it's like there's no point of worrying about money, because you're probably, even if you find something, you're gonna end up spending a bunch of money trying to do tests and stuff. You might as well get it done within the beginning. So that's kind of the key takeaways. Another key takeaway is really using a page like Notion or some sort of notepad that has all your MyChart links, has all your details on your doctors, your insurance cards, stuff like that, because it does make a huge difference when you're trying to schedule appointments and get referrals and get into portals and look at test results. I had that all kind of situated, so I was super glad that I actually made that page in Notion a long time ago, just in case anything happened and I needed that stuff. It's really stressful trying to look for your MyChart when you got test results and you can't remember your password and like all that stuff. So it's good to just get organized right now while you are healthy. So I will have an update soon. Once I know the actual surgery, I might film another video on the recovery. You're going to see a scar on my neck in future videos after this surgery for a while until it starts to fade and I put like scar cream on it and stuff. So just know that's where that came from. And yeah, I'll keep you guys updated. Otherwise, I will see you guys next time.